To start by echoing Kim's word of gratitude. We had a lot of fun last weekend. These guys sang beautifully last weekend. Everything about my heart last Sunday afternoon, I got home, my feet were tired, but my heart was full. I was so very grateful. And if you were here last Sunday, you know that we talked during our children's moment time about Easter symbols. We've got Lily still with us this morning. We have the candle with us. We still have the glitter reminding us of our Easter eggs. And this morning I want to share with you another symbol. You see, over the past several years, there is a bird for me that has come to symbolize Easter. Now, if I said resurrection bird, what might come to mind? A phoenix, right? A phoenix. That's true. Normally, with normal people, that would be a good answer. But many of you know that my mind doesn't think like normal people. So yes, the phoenix is a good resurrection bird, but it is not my personal resurrection bird. You see, I had a bit of an experience several years ago, and I fell in love. And I couldn't really figure out why until recently, why I'd fall in love with this bird. You see, this bird does not have the majesty of a bald eagle. It doesn't have the beautiful, sweet song of a sparrow. It doesn't have the bright, rich color of the male cardinal who has taken up residence outside our dining room window. You see, I fell in love with perhaps one of the ugliest birds God ever saw fit to create, the California condor. Are you laughing at my bird? You are laughing at my bird. Do we have a second picture of that bird? Do we have a second picture of my bird? Maybe. There he is. How can you not love that bird? Now, the thing I don't want you to do is I do not want you to mistake my beloved condor for some gross turkey vulture. This beautiful creature of God is nearly double the size of that roadkill scavenger, the turkey vulture. This is a bird with family values. Can we go back to the first picture, please? There he is. This is a family values bird, my friend. These are birds that are often monogamous. They often pair for life. Both male and female birds help care for the egg. They help care for the chick. And I mean, look at that bird. What's not to love? We're going to hold just for a second. Will everybody just hold for 1 second? Thank you. So this, my beloved Easter bird, has been revered by Native American tribes for centuries. The Native Americans have great respect for the California condor. They see it as a symbol of power. There's good evidence of its ceremonial significance and its special place in the lives and ceremonies of the ancient peoples. This really is a holy bird. And at first I didn't realize why I loved this bird so much. I just knew I did. And it's sort of like Easter. And I said the last several weeks, Easter is something you cannot make sense of in your brain. You can only feel Easter with your heart. And that's the same for this bird. When I have tried to explain its importance with rational, reasonable thought, I have failed. I can only explain my love for it when it touched my heart. I realized that this bird had touched my heart because this bird is nothing short of a miracle bird. In 1982, there were only 22 of these majestic creatures on the entire planet. 22. And a senior archaeologist in the state of California suspects that by the mid-1980s, we were under 10 of these birds still living in the wild. 22 years later, by the end of the 1980s, these birds that had once flew across the western skies at 55 miles an hour were nearly extinct. They were almost gone. But then came other lovers of these great ancient wonders, and they literally took matters into their own hands. They took the eggs of these birds, one at a time, very patiently, very systematically. These beloved people became co-creators with God in caring for God's beloved creature, the California condor. They worked in partnership with God on an animal that for all intents and purposes had become extinct, if it were not for lovers of ugly things. And do you know what happened? You can probably guess where this is going, right? By the end of 2014, just 2 years ago, there were over 400 condors. Over 400 condors. And half of those are successfully living in the wild. This great creature, great power and wonder, a threat to no one. The masses, the crowds nearly crucified and destroyed this wondrous beast. And then a miracle happened. The California condor was resurrected. And the story of this majestic bird has been a real-life situation that has helped me understand this Genesis story that Alan read a minute ago in a very new way. For years, we translated the words God spoke to humans, that humans are to have dominion over the fish and the birds. And dominion is the right word, but it's sort of our application, our understanding of that word that got us sideways. In that word, we have heard the call to subdue the things of the earth. And we often have had our dominion at the expense of the other creatures. And yes, we are at the top of the food chain, and we are to rule the other creatures, but we have misunderstood our responsibility and our opportunity. You see, the scripture says that we are made in the image of God, the very likeness of God, bearing the nature of God. And so it seems to me that we are called to rule as God rules. If we are made in the image of God, then we are meant to be creators and lovers of all the good things that God has made. If we are God's hands and feet here on earth, then we should be about the business of being the caretakers of all God's beloved creatures, great and small. In being created in the image of God, God has entrusted the earth and her care and her creatures to us. And too often, humanity has understood our reflection of the divine nature as a place of privilege and exclusivity. And we have forgotten our responsibility and the privilege to care and protect. Now, we get that with some animals, right? Care and protection. The beautiful songbirds, the fascinating hummingbirds that you put the feeders outside the windows so that they come to your dining room window. And then our household beloveds. My wonderful black lab. Even those wretched kittens of my niece and nephews. I am not a cat person, but I feed those ornery things when they're out of town. Care and protection. But more exotic, less precious critters, they're a little trickier sometimes. It's a little harder when they're not sleeping at the foot of your bed. But sometimes, every now and again, you get a glimpse. You get an opportunity, one might say an Easter opportunity, to have your eyes and your heart open to something different. Conservationist Rachel Carson says one way to open your eyes is to ask yourself, what if I had never seen this before? And what if I never see it again? I had such an Easter moment a couple of years ago. I was sitting in front of this huge beast of a creature. We have a picture of her. I honestly wasn't paying much attention to her. Although she's massive, it's hard to miss her. But I was more interested in the pretty animals. I was exploring the giraffes. I was overwhelmed by how fast the cheetah really is when you see it run a 100-yard dash up close and personal. So I was really only half listening to our guide because I was engaged in observing the flashy, fancy animals. I was only half listening when she introduced me to Nola. Meet Nola. There she was, lying in the mud, when I met this beautiful northern white rhino. I know, it's another bizarre-looking animal. I love the ugly creatures, I'm aware. I met Nola that day. She sat in front of me, and there's something about her that drew me to her. She was old, 42. Her species, ancient. And there was something about her. And I heard our guide explain that Nola was one of five northern white rhinos left on the entire planet. And in that moment, I had, as Rachel Carson says, an eye-opening moment. I had an Easter moment, knowing that I probably would never have again. And so I made Ryan and the kids get back on the train and ride it around the entirety of the safari park so that I could sit in her presence for just a few more minutes. I was as close to her as Kevin is in the back of the sanctuary. She was that far from me. And we went around and we came back because I just needed to be in the awesomeness of her presence. And then last fall, a friend sent me an article out of the Los Angeles Times. You can imagine what it was about. My beloved Nola had died. I sat upstairs in my office and I cried big rhinoceros tears. My heart was broken. There are only 3 of these animals still on God's earth, and you will never see them. They are under 24-hour armed guard in a private preserve in Kenya, keeping them safe. They are too old to reproduce. There will never be any more. But Nola will stay with me forever because she reminds me of all the ways that we have failed at being partners with God in caring for creation. She challenges me to do better, to be better. She challenges me to do my recycling even when it takes too much work and too much effort. She challenges me to take more seriously my responsibility, my privilege of being made in the divine image with the nature of God, and to be co-creators with God in caring for all God's creatures. It takes a little more creativity to look at the great California condor and the northern white rhino and see God's words that it was good. It was all so good. But God encourages us to see beauty as God sees it. That is what we are challenged to do, to open up our hearts so that our eyes might be opened and we might see Easter in unusual places, in unusual ways, all around us. Over the next couple weeks, we're going to explore this topic of creation and being co-creators with God. We're going to pray about what we might do to consider how God is calling us. How God is calling us to see a few more Easter moments. And for me, they'll be in memory and in honor of Nola. May it be so. May it be so for us.